Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think you're going to get some very good information. We're really in the prime of hurricane season right now. It's actually starting a little earlier than normal. You'll learn uh, some really good facts today. A little bit about my background. My name is Rob Kornahrens. I'm the founder and president CEO of Advanced Roofing. Started roofing when it was in high school and college through the summers, and then opened a little branch in Atlanta, Georgia for my boss that I worked for 10 years. And then I started Advanced Roofing in 1983, one pickup truck. And we grew it to what it is today, 7 branches, about 650 employees. We got into the solar business in 1990, the air conditioning business in 1994, and solar in 2006. So we have a complete line of cranes, equipment, HVAC, everything that involves the building envelope. So that's a little bit about my background. What are the key learning objectives today? Next. So we're going to go historically, some of the hurricanes, some of the bigger ones, some of the predictions. What does it look like today? And then what can you do to prepare for a hurricane? And then we're going to talk about roof asset management portal. How can you document everything prior to, during, and after a storm? And then we'll go sum it up with key takeaways and do a Q&A for you. What makes us advanced? We have built our reputation on commercial re-roof and occupied buildings. We have all the in-house divisions, as we spoke about, and we have 7 offices around the state. We have also have a company called Roof Connect that I helped start 20 years ago. It's and I'm presently chairman of the board. So we have 60 premier roofing contractors around the country that we can call on them if a hurricane happens. So not only can we have our existing employees from different parts of the state come in, but we can actually have other ones come from around the country. And we always have our own preparation. What do we do for fuel and all the generators? So we have been through many hurricanes. My first one was Hurricane Hugo in 1989. We did the blue tarps in St. Thomas and every one since. So we've learned a lot of experience, not only in re-roofing under normal conditions, but what to do after the storm happens. Let's take a poll right now. And anybody name what hurricane this was? I'll give you a hint. It's very tight. Look where it's going to hit. So if you can put down the answers, and then we will see who's got it right. Wow, look at this. Everybody's got this one right. Someone said Hurricane Harvey, but no, it is absolutely Hurricane Andrew, 1992. Wasn't supposed to be as strong, but look how tight that circle is. And, we see hurricanes today much broader, but that really gave a big impact, very tight, and did a lot of damage in a much smaller area than a lot of hurricanes since then. I'm going to show a little video for you about this. It was interesting. This was the Homestead Mall in Homestead, obviously, that got hit, and that's where a lot of damage happened during that storm. But we had just finished the Sears down in Homestead, and our roof stayed on. If you look at the picture to the right, that's after the hurricane. So we had just completed it, and look at the damage to the rest of the mall. Sears was the only store that could open up. The only thing they lost was the S in Sears. So now it was ears for a while until they got the sign replaced.
He kind of froze up. My name is Jason Caruth. I'm with Advanced Roofing. Just kind of carry on here. Sorry about the IT issues, but he was referring to the Homestead Mall, Cutler Ridge Mall, where the roof was put on by Advanced Roofing at Sears, and they were able to stay in business after Hurricane Andrew, which pretty much was a staple for Advanced Roofing at the time in 1992. So this is a little bit of a recap here on the projection forecast for 2023. We've already had a couple named storms out there, Bert being one of them that kind of is out in the middle of the Atlantic. We are in a favorable year. This is as far as wind shear from the prediction, but they're projecting 14 to 18 named storms with 7 to 9 hurricanes and 2 to 4 major hurricanes. Still sounds pretty active to me. So we're going to get everybody to interact. So which side of the hurricane is considered the most dangerous? Upper right quadrant of the hurricane is the right side, the upper right side of a hurricane is the most dangerous. Basically, that's where the impact, the force of the storm is. Really, any hurricane wind is really. I think a lot of people in the state over the last 10 years have been through at least one or two. We had a couple last year in Ian and Nicole that were pretty intense to come across the state. The right side of the hurricane seems to be the most intense. That's where the hurricane force winds are maximized there. So next slide. It looks like everybody got it right. Sorry, I didn't click on the results there. Rob?
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, we lost Rob. All right, so we're back. We did the poll on the upper right side. Rob, this is facts. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is my last slide, but look at the facts of that, Ian, how much it grew and how much it hit in September 23rd. It was Category 5, and it went through Cuba, lasted 8 days, and it really did more damage than any other storm as far as hurricanes go. A lot of it was flood. Everybody has been ignoring the surge, and that's really important that you look at what you have for insurance and everything else. And Dan Tighe will explain the difference between wind and hurricane shortly. But that's it was a major storm, a lot of damage. We're still over there recovering with a lot of roofs over there. So next, we're going to go into Jason. He's going to take over for me, and we actually had a plan because I was having a little bit of issues with the internet here. I'm up in Lake Toxaway outside of Asheville doing this from here, and I had a plan. If I did go offline, Jason would pick up. So the plan worked. So that's what we're talking about today as well, hurricane plan. So Jason, take it away.
Thanks, Rob. So here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about what to do before a hurricane. We have a little bit of before and after checklist that we could utilize. There's a lot of property managers, a lot of building owners on this call. This is a little bit of a recap of how to maintain your roof system and what to do prior and post a hurricane. One of the things that we always recommend is take photographs, current photographs of your building. The outside at ground level, if you have the ability to get on the roof, take the pictures of the area of the roof. Photographs go a long way when if you do have damage and you need to go to a claim with an insurance company. You have current timestamp photographs of what the condition was like. Some of the types of pictures that you want to take are the overviews of your building. When you get specific equipment, like in the second picture there, mechanical equipment, if you can take serial numbers, pictures of serial numbers, makes and models. If any of those things blow off, you have the exact type that was installed, so you can get reimbursed for those specific models that you have. Checking your roof for proper drainage. You know, Rob talked about Hurricane Ian. There was a ton of rain in these two storms, Ian and Nicole, and the roof, and it rained 3 or 4 days over the entire state. And making sure that the roof is clear of debris at your drains, at your gutter systems, making sure that the water can get off of the roof and not impede the problem for leaks. The picture over there on the right side about the pine needles around the drain, the gutters being full. These things are maintenance items to roof systems that, periodically need to be done at least twice a year to make sure that your roof is performing. We're going to, Julia and our HVAC department are going to talk about their pre and post checklist, but skylight coverings, clean off the roof, just making sure that there's no debris up on the roof is basically one of the items that you want to do. So next slide. And what to look for, where to focus. If you have the ability to get up on your roof, you want to be able to look at penetrations. You want to be able to look at the drainage areas. Like I spoke about, clogged drains basically just backs the rainwater up and causes the potential for a couple things: water to enter in areas of where it's not used to, and then the weight of water on the roof system over a long period of time with such a lot of rain in a short period can cause structural issues as well, and that'd be the worst case scenario. Looking at the walls, cracks in your walls, making sure that metal is secure. We offer this service, not the day before the hurricane, but prior to hurricanes, twice a year, to make sure that a professional is looking at your roof and identifying that your roof system is maintained correctly. So, next slide. Creating a roof file. There's a lot of things that go on with documentation. If you have roofs that are under warranties, knowing where your roof warranty is. If you have a service history of maintenance and repairs done to the roof, keeping those in a file, an electronic file obviously would be the best. Therefore, if you do have damage and you need to file a claim with your roofing manufacturer, you have those documents in the end. Any drawings, any documentation with your roof that you have, make sure that you can keep that in a file and organize yourself in case of a natural disaster. That way you can refer back to it. We can help you out with warranties with manufacturers. We're installers for all the major manufacturers in the United States, and we do warranty work with them as well. So, and then inspection reports, documentation as far as whether or not anybody's inspected it, maintenance to it, all that goes a long way, because when your warranty, when you do have to file a warranty claim, they're going to want to see how much maintenance has been done to the roof. It's part of your responsibility as a building owner to maintain the roof. We utilize the analogy of buying a car in the out of a lot, and you drive it off, a brand new car. If you come back in 15,000 miles and tell them it's not running anymore, they're going to say, well, did you change the oil? Did you rotate the tires? And if you don't have any of that documentation, your warranty is no good. So same thing with the roof system. We like to utilize that analogy to maintain the roof. Therefore, the warranty and the manufacturer that is holding the warranty has known that you've done your due diligence to make sure that the roof is performing. Next. Dangerous time after the hurricane, after what's gone by. Everybody's very curious, wants to walk outside, see what's out there, how many trees are down, what the damage is. It can be a very dangerous time for people walking around. Be careful. First of all, assess the area, make sure there's no down power lines and puddles, make sure there's no trees down on structures. Be cautious. Get out there, walk around, understand what the condition is, and then begin to take photos of the damage that has occurred if you have incurred damage to your building. Then you have the ability to reach back to the insurance company, file a claim, and you have that pre-inspection reports of the pre-pictures. You're basically just prepared yourself if you do have to go down that route with getting your insurance company involved. So. Some of the bullet points: do not attempt to get up on your roof and fix your own issues. You don't know what the structure's like at that point. If you do have roof leaks, call a professional after a hurricane. It's leaking for some reason. It could be wind-blown debris, equipment up on the roof that could have flown and made cuts into the roof. It's best to call somebody that knows what they're doing and have us go up there and inspect why your roof is damaged. Big thing that happens in the state is you get a bunch of people coming in from out of state, unlicensed contractors. Buyer beware. Whenever you have somebody coming knocking on your building stating that they're a licensed contractor, you want to ask for insurance, ask for a license, state of Florida license. We hear stories every year about people that get had because They hired somebody to do repairs. They installed it, just no permits, no nothing. And they got problems with their roof systems, 6 months, 8 months down the line. So do a little bit of your homework in that case, making sure that you're hired a licensed contractor, and making sure that they have insurance as well. So next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Paul Murphy. Paul Murphy is our manager of our HVAC department, and he's going to talk to you in regards to what to look for your mechanical equipment on your roof.
Thank you, Jason. Hello, everybody. Paul Murphy here, Advanced Air Systems Division Manager. Yes, I'm going to go over a couple different systems that we see for mechanical equipment on your roof. Two of the systems are pretty similar. Cable tie-down system and a strap tie-down system is typically what we see for equipment tied to a stand. When you're checking out these, you're doing a pre-inspection, you definitely want to check and make sure none of the cables or straps have been cut. They can be cut sometimes by technicians that don't understand how the system works, and they cut the cables or straps in order to access and maintenance the equipment, and then they don't reattach them. So you want to make sure those systems are put back in place, if not redone with a clip tie-down system, which we can go on to next. Is a clip tie-down system consists of a heavy gauge steel clip that attaches to the base of the equipment. And you just want to make sure that you have about 3 screws going into the equipment base and 1 screw down into the structure. As long as you have that on all 4 corners, that is typically the detail that we see for condensing units. There's other style units on top of curbs. Those units, we typically are looking for a fastener every 6-inch on center. So as long as you have a fastener going in from the unit into the curb every 6 inches, that should be good to survive the hurricane, and you shouldn't have any issues. You want to make sure that all your panels are secure, that all the fasteners are in the panels, so that way you don't have any panels flying off during a hurricane. One of the biggest damages we see to roofs after hurricanes is equipment panels flying off the unit and cutting the roof open and causing a leak. So making sure just your equipment panels have all the necessary screws and fasteners in them is another thing to look out for. And as far as after post checklist, I always recommend having the your HVAC contractor come out to do a post inspection, mainly because all the possible electrical issues that could have happened or any other kind of situation. I wouldn't want to put you in harm's way. So I always recommend going to your contractor to do a post inspection, so that way he can make sure all the electrical has been properly taken care of and the equipment is safe to service. So that kind of wraps up what I have for HVAC. I'm going to send it over to Julia for the solar pre and post checklist.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julia Barton. I'm a key account executive for the solar division, which is called Advanced Green Technologies. And solar is one of our fastest growing segments. We're seeing more and more solar being installed. And with that, solar is really no different than roofing or HVAC, where we want to look before storm season to make sure it's operating correctly and after any major events to ensure there has been no damage or any other concerns that may have happened during the storm. So firstly, we want to check the inverter status and the communication status to make sure we are getting in all our alerts and information on how the system is performing. Next, we want to visually inspect all of our electrical gear. So solar is no different in terms of corrosion from salt air, and therefore we do a lot of design around having corrosive-proof gear. We're really going up there and looking for proper terminations, making sure our gear is in good condition. Next up is torque marks. Every bolt we put into place, sometimes millions of bolts, are torqued to the manufacturer's specifications. We really want to go up there and spot check, make sure that we don't have any of those connections coming loose, and maybe putting our entire system at a larger risk. We just rebuilt about 2 years ago an enormous solar system of about 1.5 megawatts, and unfortunately, the entire system blew off the roof, shredded up around 150,000 square foot of roof. And forensically, when the insurance company got involved and looked at it, the installing contractor used a bolt that wasn't to the specifications of the racking system. There's actually a video of the entire array under about 100 miles per hour of wind load, vibrating and coming loose. So looking at these torque marks is very, very important and critical. But of course, first things first, making sure you get a contractor to install it properly in the first place. Next up is looking at conduits and connections, inspecting our wires, and really just getting eyes on the system as a whole. Also documenting its conditions going into the hurricane season. So in the event of a major storm, you have a very good baseline of where the system was pre-storm. Lastly, if your system is in the direct path of a major storm, I would recommend scheduling a power down with one of our technicians. Next slide, please. So post-hurricane, you'll see a lot of the same points as pre-hurricane, but there are some things I want to touch upon. So firstly, if your system was turned off during the storm, you will need to schedule a appointment with a technician to get everything up and running again. First thing to do before turning on the system is checking if there's no water damage to any of the components, no leakage, and any other obvious damages. So after the system is back on, you will again need to check the operating voltage, the inverter status, and check if all the information is coming through and all our alerts are coming through. Now, one thing I'd recommend doing, especially in the event of a major storm, is getting a thermal scan. This will identify any issues that you cannot see. Another great example here is a carport we built. It was directly hit, and the entire structure and solar panels seemed fine. However, the system is under a lot of vibration during an event, and because of this, some of the major structural connections were disengaged. And something like this only would show up on a thermal scan. So even though the carport looked great and withstood the storm, it would not withstand another storm in that same condition. Other than that, we're going to be removing any debris and any debris covering the modules, and that could cause shading. And now I'm giving it back to Jason, who's going to do uphold. Thank you.
So this poll, we talked about warranties earlier. Do you know if your roof is under warranty? There's a difference between having a piece of paper and knowing if your roof is under warranty. There's two things there. So having a warranty piece of paper and maintaining your roof is what we talked about a little bit ago. So give you a second. It's a lot of storms there. It says that's the paths of the storms the last 100 years. So we're definitely a target here in Florida. All right, if we can share the results. I don't see them. Anybody see them? I don't see them.
Looks like Jason, about half of them say they yes, quarter say no, and the other quarter's unsure. So
yeah, like we talked about earlier, just basically maintaining your roof is part of the requirements of your warranty. If you read down in there, there's going to be bullet points that state that it's the owner's responsibility, not necessarily to do work to the roof system, but at least have somebody inspect it. This is you here, right, Rob? You're on mute, Rob.
yeah, sorry about that. So types of warranties, manufacturer's NDL. What does that mean? No dollar limit. So that means that at the time that the warranty is claimed is put in, it is a covered labor and material warranty, and it's at that time. There's also limited manufacturer material warranties. We don't recommend these at all. There's a lot of language in there that excludes that why it's not their fault. And we deal with a lot of this when manufacturers have issues, and they always try to blame it on a labor issue. So NDLs are the best. They're very common out there. There's 20, 25 years manufacturers. So you want to make sure when you purchase a roof that you do get an NDL warranty that covers labor and material. You can also, there's different ones that get wind riders for hurricanes. So they would require maybe some additional fasteners, and they go up to 140 miles an hour, depending on the manufacturer. Different manufacturers ride them, some don't, but a wind rider is always a good thing to have. And then you have the contractor's warranty. That is basically like us. We would issue, most of them are 2-year warranties. That's the legal limit. Sometimes we go up to 5, but that is important as well. And the contractor, how long they've been in business, their financial strength. So you want to look at all that when you're purchasing a new roof. And then next, I think we're turning it over to Dan Tighe. He owns his own law firm. He's going to talk about insurance. And is that right?
Great. Yeah,
Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, Rob, and appreciate everyone making the time this morning. That's actually a really great segue into what I'm going to talk about is the warranties. What happens? You have damage on your roof. You have that warranty to protect you for all insured losses. And then, of course, what we're going to discuss is the insured losses that fit in, there when you do have damage caused by a covered peril, which would be a sudden and accidental loss, which would be something like a hurricane, which is the purpose of today's discussion. So great segue. Very quickly, the first slide here, just a little bit about myself. I have a practice here in Florida and New York. We've recovered hundreds of millions of dollars, a ton of commercial properties, which we really like and appreciate. For me personally, there's more complexity, there's more to get into, and I feel I can really add value on those more complex, larger losses. And also I get to work with sophisticated people like Rob and his team. So it's, that's where we focused our practice. I've been featured, in written publications and obviously in speaking engagements regarding insurance issues, insurance recovery issues, the interplay between insurance and politics, and all sorts of things that bore people who are not in my position, have to sleep, but we're really passionate about them. And then the last thing I'll just say is what my firm focuses on and what we do a little differently. We call it claims management. So we're not a traditional law firm. We're not running to a courthouse and trying to file a lawsuit. We're not trying to get involved, embroiled in a litigation process. Now, certainly, if that's where we end up and that's the tools that we have to employ to get the results we need, we're very comfortable and happy doing that. But our focus is on a quick and prompt, complete resolution without the need for doing all of that. So we'll come in, we'll adjust the claim, we'll bring experts in, and we'll try to amicably resolve it without need for litigation. Next slide, please. And I'm sorry, for some reason, I'm not seeing the slides, so I'm going on my own here. So if I get ahead, maybe Rob or someone just give me a little heads up. So understanding the hurricane risk, obviously we've gotten into some of the more particulars about hurricanes on this presentation. And if you're in Florida and you're in property management, you probably already have a decent background on hurricanes, how they form, how many days notice you kind of have, just knowing you got a few days before you know if it's going to be direct impact or partial impact. So I'm just going to touch on it briefly. Of course, we're in hurricane season. Hurricane season starts June 1st, ends November 30th. That's the specifics of this presentation. But insured losses and windstorms do happen here in Florida outside of that time frame. So it's important to keep that in mind. But hurricane season, June 1st, November 30th, and you're going to have category 1 through 5. And we've seen tremendous catastrophic losses from category 1, and even below that, we've seen roofs peeled back from tropical storms. What happens is they're giving you a projection of the overall storm. That doesn't mean you're not going to have properties affected by microbursts or tornado spin-offs, or just the way that the geography works, that coming off the water and there's nothing protecting it from the wind shear. We're going to see all sorts of damage. at every single category. And likewise, you may go through a strong category 3, 4, 5 storm. And if you had a great roof put on by the team at Advanced, 2 code, really high quality, great installation, you may get through this storm without any issues. And that's terrific too. But the most prudent thing to do is have your property inspected following a hurricane or any major storm, whether or not you see obvious damage. And, part of the presentation earlier was talking about taking great photo sets and gathering that evidence. Also engaging with a professional early and having them out, because that's where their knowledge and experience can really come to play and really make a difference for your community. I've become something of a roofing expert from my work helping policy owners. But that being said, I rely on experts. And if I was in a position where I was community asset manager or property management professional, that's just one of the many, many different things that you need to be fluent in to do your job well. So it's probably prudent to rely on someone whose true focus and true expertise is on roofing. So again, that's the number one piece of advice you're going to get from me. And it sounds like from some of the other professionals this morning is you need to get these properties inspected. We'll go back to our old friend, Benjamin Franklin, who says a stitch in time saves 9. So that fits in a number of different parts of this great presentation this morning. The next thing to know, very, very important, vitally important, is you need to file notice of your claim right away with your insurer. We've had tragic situations where, we had a church that had very, very clear Hurricane Irma damage, and they were running around with buckets during the storm. And it's this beautiful tile roofing system, specialty roofing system, very, very expensive. They didn't call us until 2 years later, 2.5 years later. And at that point, the insurance company said, well, you never gave us notice promptly. And that's one of the items, one of the obligations that you have as the policyholder in your insurance policy, is that if you suspect damage, you need to give us prompt notice and report that claim with us. And unfortunately, the position those people were in was they were significantly disadvantaged in what we were able to recover for them, rather than what should have been a very easy slam dunk claim where they were indemnified for all their losses. We were only able to recover a small portion of that based on really what is kind of a technicality, unfortunately. But that being said, an insurance policy is a contract and you need to honor those obligations. So just as I said, make sure you call a roofing expert if you believe you have roofing damage, or solar, of course. Likewise, if you believe you have an insurance claim, feel free to call me, of course, or whatever expert you do rely on. Next slide, please. And this is more insurance coverage based, and hopefully this will help provide value for you all. Right now, we're in a tremendous time of uncertainty and crisis here in Florida regarding insurance rates. And I don't need to do a poll because I know you're all dealing with it, probably without exception. Rates are going up, the coverages are coming down, and there's a variety of reasons that are given for this. And no matter what those are, we need to get the right coverage for our associations, for our asset owners, and our properties. We need to get the right coverages, and we want to do it as economically as possible. So I'm going to discuss some aspects of selecting the right coverage. And this, again, is from my perspective. You're going to want to work with your broker or insurance professional, of course, but hopefully giving you a little unique perspective from a lawyer here. So the first part is hurricane deductibles. In Florida, these are going to be percentage-based generally. What we've seen most frequently are a 2%, a 5%, or a 10% deductible. We could do a whole hour conversation just about deductibles. So let me just give you the quick and dirty here, is that the higher your deductible, which is your self-funded portion of the restoration project, the lower your premium is going to be. So the analysis you're doing when you're selecting that deductible amount is, if I do have a catastrophic loss, how much of that am I able to and willing to self-fund the required restoration versus how much do I want the insurance company to pick up? That deductible, you will have to pay that, out of pocket, or your asset owners out of pocket. That is part of the contract. But again, you may make a decision where you say, hey, we've got, plenty of assets. We're not living hand to mouth cash wise, we can save some money up front with lower premiums, knowing that if we do have that catastrophic event, we will have to come out of pocket significantly more. And that's an analysis that you want to do either with your association asset owners, or if it's your assets, you want to look at, your personal situation. Next is ACV versus RCV coverage. We'll start with RCV. Obviously, these are acronyms. RCV is replacement cost value coverage. This is going to typically cover the cost of replacing the damaged property with new products in like kind and quality to what is being replaced. So importantly is, we're replacing what was damaged, and also access to those things that are damaged. You need nailable surfaces, some other stuff. Again, not for the purposes of this discussion, but you can replace the damaged property with new property, right? Brand new. It's a 10-year-old roof. You get a brand new roof, despite the fact it was 10 years old. And that's the distinction when we talk about an ACV policy, which is an actual cash value policy. That's going to be calculated by RCV, the replacement cost value of the property that was damaged, less subtracted by whatever the depreciation of the physical materials that were on your roofing or other systems. And that's going to create a more significant out-of-pocket burden. In the replacement cost value, you're going to get a new roof for your old roof. In actual cash value policy, you're going to get the payment of the new roof less whatever the depreciation based on the age of that roofing or other system, what that is. So it's, again, just like when we talk about deductibles, you can make that choice and make that analysis. Hey, do I want to save some money by purchasing an ACV policy right now and save a little money on my premiums throughout the life of this asset? Or do I want to be fully protected, spend a little more upfront, but when that catastrophic event, or if that catastrophic event hits, then not have to come out of pocket quite as much? So those are two kind of interesting levers you can pull in terms of how much coverage you want versus how much you're willing to spend, or how much you think it's prudent to spend on your insurance coverage. Next is in Hurricane Ian specifically, we've seen a ton of issues regarding was the damage from hurricane or was the damage from flood water? And the interplay is very important because, of course, if you have two insurers, they oftentimes will point at each other, and the hurricane coverage will say, well, that's really flood damage. And the flood damage will say, well, that's really hurricane damage. So I'll give you the general rule of thumb. Again, I can't even call this legal advice. It's so broad, but as I do have to be prudent in what I give as advice. Generally speaking, water that comes down and affects your property from above, that is generally going to be hurricane or windstorm covered losses. Water that rises from the ground up is generally going to be considered flood. Now, there are instances in both cases, where you may have exceptions. So, that analysis needs to be done on a case-by-case basis. However, a general rule of thumb is what I just told you there. The final point I'll make regarding insurance coverages are, obviously, if you're managing properties for business owners, or if your assets are, your business's properties, it's important to have business interruption coverage to protect against lost income during the recovery period and the rebuilding period. We're going through a lot of that on the West Coast right now with manufacturing facilities, warehouses, people who own rental facilities where they rent out to businesses. This business interruption insurance has been a lifesaver for these people. So it's certainly something that you want to strongly consider. I'll just touch on as well. You'll see in most policies, you're going to have coverage for a bunch of other stuff. You're going to have electronic recovery. You're going to have cleaning up debris and some other policy coverages. It's important to read the policy. It is drafted in pure legalese, so it's not easy to understand. If you want an expert and you have one, reach out to an expert. You have one you trust and rely on, great. My office certainly very happy to help people with it as well. Next slide, please. So this is now getting into what happens when we have a loss. This is just touching on the hurricane damage, the claim evidence. So what are we looking at on these inspections? First of all, and very obviously, is you're going to have damage to roofing materials or the roofing system This can be catastrophic where you have it halfway or fully peeled off, or broken tiles everywhere and debris everywhere. Very obvious. But some of the less obvious things, and I heard some people touch on it earlier as well, is a not catastrophic loss, right? Maybe you have fasteners that have backed out. These things are still considered damage under your policy. For example, you may have a reduction of the water shedding capabilities of your roofing system, right? That's going to lead to a premature demise of that roofing system and potentially other damages to what that roofing system protects. Next, you're going to have decreased resistance to weather. So let's say you maybe have an apartment complex and it has a shingle roof. Those shingles are pretty good at holding up until they lift and they get debris underneath them. Same thing, tile. You may have fasteners that have backed out badly. When that next storm comes, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have problems, and it may not even be safe for your residents there. Next would be a loss of service life. So that's also considered real and actual damages and typically covered under an insurance policy. So, we'll see this in hailstorms, maybe in northern Florida, central Florida. You may not get big hail stones that cause holes in the roof, but it certainly will degrade the usable life of that asset, and that is typically covered as well. Next is wind damage, more specifically to roofing systems, damaged, uplift, or missing components. Again, tile roofs. Tiles are supposed to be like this. They're not supposed to go in excess of, I think it's 3 inches. My roofing experts can help me out with that. TAS, Technical Application Standard 106, is where we look for that. But if your roofing system, your tile roofing system has tiles that are lifting up like this, it's no longer fastened correctly. That is damage that's caused by wind, not by sitting in the sun. Next, you may have structural or decking issues. You may have water coming through penetrations in that roof where decking is no longer firm and watertight and dry, and no longer providing also the insulation value that's required. Next is punctures, debris strikes, and then leading to moisture intrusion and leaks, which are pretty obvious. And we'll also touch on wind damage to windows and doors. It doesn't just mean a window's been blown in. You can have obviously that direct impact damage where you see scrapes and scuffs and gouges or broken or cracked windows. But also pressure changes will pop those window gaskets. You may have frame damage. We saw a lot in Hurricane Michael in the Panhandle where the window frames were all tilted. So these are all things just to give you an idea what to look out for, but also to hopefully educate you to the fact that a professional is going to come in and do all of this investigation for you, and they're going to do it as an expert, and they're going to know what to look for. And that's why it's prudent to have an expert in, not just kind of look it over yourself and say, yeah, it looks pretty good, or I don't have any calls, any complaining residents, we must be okay. Really, the prudent thing to do after a storm is to call a professional. Next slide, please. Getting a little into the insurance policies here. An insurance policy is just a contract. It's a big, hefty contract with a lot of legalese and a lot of references to different sections. There's an art to reading them, but at the end of the day, it's just a contract. And it's a contract that outlines the duties and obligations of both parties, both the insurer and the policy owner. And that's what we were talking about with prompt notice and some other stuff, and I'll dive into that here. But prior to a loss, what are your duties? You need to obtain the proper coverage, right? You can't obtain a coverage as a residential property if you're renting it out. That's the simplest example there. And then also, too, acting prudently and reasonably to prepare and secure your property. If you've got decorative items or other things that may fly away in a storm, and you've got a Category 4 hurricane bearing down on your property, it would be reasonable to secure those items or move them inside. And that's, part of what a good property manager will do for their association or for the asset owners. Next is the post-loss obligations. So these are actually things that need to be complied with for coverage. If you don't honor your obligations and duties, it's very difficult to try to hold the insurer to task to honor theirs. The three most important here are prompt notice. Hey, we believe we have damage. Whether we know it's an insurance claim or not at this point, we do have a duty to give prompt notice. Next is a duty to mitigate. Let's say you have a flat roofing system and you've got a big gouge and water's pouring in. You can't just let it pour in naturally, but you can't just let the water pour in, destroy everything and say, oh, now I need a whole new everything. You have to take, again, reasonable, prudent steps to mitigate. You don't have to be a superhero. And as one of the earlier slides referenced, we don't necessarily want you going up there and using the infomercial duct tape or whatever, Flex Seal. We don't necessarily want that. We want you to, what is a prudent act for a property manager is call advance, get them out there, get professionals to keep you dry while you go through this process. And then third is a duty to cooperate. So you do have a duty to cooperate with your insurer. They have a right to make an investigation, whether they're denying, paying, delaying your claim, doesn't really matter. You have to give them access. And again, under all three of those things, reasonable is the term to remember. No one's asking you to be a superhero. You have to be reasonable in your dealings with them. So rights when dealing with an insurer post-disaster, commercial roofing systems are different than residential typically. Also, commercial policies and commercial insurance carriers and insurers, some of them aren't even carriers, some of them are syndicates, like Lloyd's of London you may have heard of, or you may actually have insurance with. But it's very different than a general homeowner's policy, where that's a lot more straightforward. For commercial policies, they're going to be defined by the policy. These are traditionally written on the excess and surplus markets, and they will not have the protections that Florida law gives, policy owners of domestic Florida insurance policies. These may also have different contractual timelines and different duties and obligations than you would expect a regular residential or just a domestic carrier's commercial policy. So again, it's just the prudent thing to do if you're in the position of managing a property is to get experts involved to help you. I know Advanced team is terrific. My team, we review policies. We'll give you, prudent advice, even if we're not retained to help your community or your assets. We're happy to spend that time, just as we are now, helping to educate, trying to do as much good as possible. And then finally, what is your recourse if your insurer doesn't act in good faith, or if they dispute the claim, right? It doesn't mean that they're acting badly, but you're saying, hey, I've got, the roof's going to cost me $4 million. You're only offering me $2 million. Something's amiss. At that point, and they're not offering any more money, you're in a dispute with your insurance company. That's really the role that we fill. We'll come in, we'll actually present these claims, to hopefully make sure they go smoothly, present them very professionally. And then we will also be called in sometimes when we do have that dispute, or when you have that dispute. So next slide, please. So here's my last slide here, just kind of giving a quick summary. I certainly hope that I've been able to provide some value in terms of what I see as important as a lawyer who deals in these claims, in terms of securing the right coverage, in terms of what your obligations are, and then in terms of, really relying on professionals and being proactive, best serving your clients, your asset owners. So again, just want to highlight the importance of working with professionals who have specific relevant experience with the complexities and the scope of commercial claims. Unfortunately, I see a lot in these hurricane situations where all of a sudden the divorce lawyer in town, the PI lawyer in town, and the real estate lawyer in town all put their sign, hurricane damage lawyer, property insurance lawyer. I don't know what experience they have that leads them to believe they can just jump into this practice area and try to deftly navigate all of these complexities with no experience. To me, it sounds a little bit naive. So what I would recommend is rely on someone who has that specific relevant experience. And likewise, working with selecting a roofing contractor, we all know the Advanced name. They're the biggest, baddest in the industry here. You're getting the right products, the right service, the right warranties when you work with that trusted brand. What happens is after these storms, you get guys knocking doors saying, hey, I'll take care of everything. You don't have to worry about anything. It doesn't sound exceptionally prudent to me to rely on something like that. So quickly summarizing how we work, Tighe PA claims management, we're happy to help people with pre-loss reviews, policy reviews, anything you need. We look at it as a relationship. We pride ourselves a quick response and proactive processes. We don't want to be waiting on anything. We're keeping our foot on that gas pedal, keeping engaged with your insurer, trying to get that quick, prompt, amicable resolution. We're going to do a thorough investigation and create a comprehensive scope of loss. And that's going to have every single screw, nail, every single piece of material in there, completely scoped out. And of course, our clients get a copy of that, all on the same page, same team, working towards resolution. We're going to support this by a CSI style investigation. Everyone knows that CSI, the crime shows, right? We want to look in every room. We want to find that bloody glove, or we want to look in every room and see that there isn't a bloody glove, but there's a crack in the front room window. That's the style of investigation we want to do. We're going to gather all the evidence to support our claim. We're going to present that to the insurer. We're going to say, here's the unassailable evidence that we've gathered. Here's a itemized, detailed, a line item scope of work that needs to be done with corresponding estimated prices. We want to give them every reason to simply pay your claim fairly and quickly. So we're looking for that amicable resolution. But of course, if they want to do the dance, if they don't want to pay you fairly, we're going to bat for you, and we're happy to handle it through litigation, mediation, appraisal, whatever's necessary. We're full service. We're willing to do it all. So again, appreciate everyone making the time this morning. I appreciate the team at Advanced Roofing for having me as well. And we love looking at this as a team approach. You're a property management professional. You're doing the job that you do diligently, doing it great. Advanced is doing the roofing and solar and the other projects they're doing. In fact, they're doing that great. And we're coming in, we're assisting if and when you need us on insurance issues and on insurance claims, and have that nice team look. So that's all I got. I'm very happy to make myself available for questions. You should have my email. If not, we'll make sure we circulate it out, and look forward to hearing and helping anyone that I can.
Thank you, Dan. And I know we only have 5 minutes left. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. That would be great. Sorry, we're running a little bit behind, but Dan's correct. The claims management is a better term. And we've seen roofs that look fine and then do a wind uplift test. The bubble test looks like a skylight and go negative pressure and find out that it did detach, even though it wasn't visible to the eye. So very important, the claims management. So that is very important. Thanks, Dan, for all the clarification. Hurricanes come with warnings. Heed to them. We use Wonderground. Tropical Hurricane, that's a good website. NOAA has great information, Hurricane Tracker. So there's several ones. The media gets things hyped up. You better educating yourself and reading about the professionals, what they're saying about the hurricane. But we all know from like Wilma, that was supposed to be Cat 1 and don't just come across, and it changed. So hurricanes are, can do whatever they want. We already have an unstable hurricane season. We have 2 degrees warmer ocean temperatures, but we have high wind shears. So that's kind of levels things out. So even though we get the predictions, it could be way off. They're just that prediction. So let's heed to them. Make sure that you have an emergency plan, a phone list, have your roof inspected before and after. And again, insurance policies, Dan covered that very well. We have something called Advanced Access, and we offer free inspection. That allows you to our proprietary software where you can actually do an inventory of your roof and do a roof asset management plan. Next slide, please. So that's basically, we can go over that with you, but if anybody has one, we can go over that. And then next slide is, we have previous webinars that we record this one and all of them. So you're welcome to download that and see what else you want to do. And we'll continue to invite you to more webinars. And then our key account managers, these are just a few of them around the state. We're all here to serve you. Thank everybody. If you have any questions, we'll be on for a couple more minutes. Otherwise, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you learned I always like to take 2 or 3 takeaways. Hopefully we did that for you. And let's just pray that we don't get a hurricane in Florida. We don't need it. We all know what's happened with the property insurance. We need a reprieve. Some of the legislation will help, but it's very, very slow to happen. It's insurance markets swing. It's like a pendulum. And right now, it's a very tight market. That's why the rates are increasing. We're hoping that we don't have any major stuff and we go back the other way. But in the foreseeable future, it looks like we're going to be in this high premium arena, which is it's not good for the whole economy and everybody involved. So again, thank everybody, and have a wonderful 4th of July weekend, and proud to be in America, that's for sure.